Kareem Al Fahd, the powerful nightclub owner who ruled Dubai's nightlife, and Ananya Rao, the ambitious Indian bartender chasing her dreams, two lives that collided in a world of glamour and secrets. What began as a forbidden affair quickly spiraled into obsession, control, and betrayal. And when Ananya finally tried to break free, Kareem's pride turned deadly, leading to a shocking crime that exposed the darkness behind the city's glittering lights. Dubai at night was a world unlike any other. The desert city, known for its luxury and towering skyscrapers, came alive after sunset with glowing lights, fast cars, and music that echoed through its streets. Tourists and locals filled the clubs, eager to taste the city's promise of endless glamour. Among the countless spots to party, Velour Lounge stood as a place of legend. It was not just a nightclub, but a status symbol, a playground for the rich, and a magnet for those who wanted to be seen. Expensive cars lined the entrance. Security men stood tall in sharp suits, and inside, the atmosphere was intoxicating. Crystal chandeliers lit up the dance floor, champagne bottles popped endlessly, and money flowed like water. Behind this empire of nightlife was Kareem Al Fahd, a man who lived for luxury and control. Tall, sharply dressed, and always surrounded by an air of mystery, he was known as the king of Dubai's nightlife. To the public, Kareem was a success story, a self-made businessman who turned his investments into fortune. To those who worked under him, he was feared as much as he was respected. Kareem demanded perfection in everything, from the way his bartenders poured a drink to the music his DJs played. Nothing at Velour Lounge escaped his eye, but there was more to Kareem than his glamorous public life. He was a man driven by ego, someone who craved admiration and submission in equal measure. Every night he watched the crowds, not just as customers, but as pieces of his kingdom. The women who worked for him were especially under his scrutiny, and his power gave him access to anyone he desired. Behind the neon lights and loud music, Kareem's hunger for control was growing, waiting for the moment it would consume him. Ananya Rao arrived in Dubai with dreams much larger than the suitcase she carried. She was only 27, but she had already worked in several bars and restaurants in India. When she secured a position at Velour Lounge, she felt she had stepped into another universe. Everything about the place was overwhelming. The luxury decor, the expensive clientele, the endless flow of money. She quickly realized this was not an ordinary job, but a chance to climb higher than she had ever imagined. From her very first shift, Ananya stood out. Her efficiency behind the counter impressed the managers, but it was her charm that drew people in. She had a warm smile and a natural confidence that made guests feel special, even in a club filled with glamour. Within weeks, customers began asking for her by name. They loved how she remembered their favorite drinks, how she listened to their stories, and how she carried herself with elegance that belied her modest background. In a place where most employees faded into the background, Ananya shone brightly. Her rise did not go unnoticed. Fellow staff admired her, though some whispered with envy about how quickly she had become the center of attention. She began earning better tips than most, and her presence added to the prestige of Velour Lounge. For Ananya, it was both thrilling and overwhelming. She had wanted a better life, and it seemed she was finally on the right path. Yet, beneath the admiration from the crowd, there were watchful eyes studying her every move. Among them was Kareem Al Fahd, the man who owned the empire she had just stepped into. To him, Ananya was not merely an employee. She was something more, something that stirred his curiosity and awakened a dangerous interest he rarely allowed himself to feel. Kareem Al Fahd was a man who thrived on desire and control, and the more he watched Ananya Rao, the more he felt drawn to her. At first, it was her beauty that caught his attention, the graceful way she moved behind the bar, the effortless way she charmed customers. But soon it became something deeper. Kareem was used to women falling at his feet, dazzled by his wealth and influence. Ananya, however, seemed different. She was polite and respectful, but she kept her distance, never bowing to his presence the way others did. That sense of quiet resistance intrigued him, feeding his obsession. He began finding excuses to be near her. On busy nights, he would stop by the bar to watch her work, commenting on her skill or offering advice she didn't need. He started sending her expensive gifts, designer handbags, jewelry, perfumes that cost more than her monthly salary. Ananya tried to refuse them, but Kareem insisted, making it difficult for her to escape his attention. Soon, she found herself caught between fear and flattery. She had come to Dubai to build a better future, not to get entangled with her powerful employer, but Kareem's influence was overwhelming. The relationship that followed was not built on love, but on power. To outsiders, it might have seemed glamorous: private dinners at exclusive restaurants, rides in luxury cars, weekends at hidden resorts. Yet behind the glitter, there was a darker truth. Kareem demanded her time, her loyalty, and her silence. He wanted control over her in every way, and he made it clear that saying no was not an option. Ananya knew she was stepping into dangerous territory, but she felt trapped, unable to resist the force of a man who always got what he wanted. As months passed, the dazzling exterior of Ananya's secret life began to crack. What had once seemed like a whirlwind of luxury soon revealed itself to be a prison. Kareem's affection was conditional, tied to obedience and silence. He demanded constant updates on where she was, who she spoke to, and what she planned to do. The gifts that had once seemed flattering now felt like chains, reminders of how deeply he had entangled her in his world. Ananya realized she was no longer living freely. She was being controlled. Her shifts at Velour Lounge, which had once filled her with energy, now weighed heavily on her. She could feel his eyes on her at all times. If she laughed too freely with a customer, Kareem would notice. If she stayed behind after work to talk to friends, he would question her. What had been admiration turned into suffocating surveillance. Ananya tried to hide her discomfort, but inside she was growing restless and afraid. She had not come to Dubai to become someone's possession. The turning point came when Kareem suggested she leave her job altogether. He wanted her full-time, away from the club, existing only in his private world. To him, it was a declaration of love. To her, it was a warning sign. Ananya had worked hard to reach this point in her career, and she was unwilling to throw it all away for a relationship she no longer wanted. She began to understand the danger she was in. Kareem was not a man who accepted rejection. Still, she knew she had to act. Her independence was slipping away, and if she did not make a choice soon, her life would no longer be her own. That fear pushed her toward the most difficult decision she would ever make. Ananya's decision to end the affair was not made lightly. She had spent weeks battling with herself, weighing the risks against her growing desperation to be free. By now, Kareem's control had become unbearable. Every message from him carried an unspoken command. Every meeting left her drained. She wanted her life back, a life where her success came from her own hard work, not from being tied to a man who viewed her as property. Finally, one evening, she gathered the courage to tell him it was over. For Ananya, it was an act of liberation. She felt a surge of relief as the words left her lips, as if she had cut through the invisible chains binding her. But for Kareem, it was the ultimate insult. A man of his stature was not accustomed to rejection, and certainly not from someone he believed he owned. The pride that had built his empire now twisted into rage. Instead of accepting her decision, he saw it as betrayal, a personal attack on his power and dominance. In the days that followed, his obsession deepened. He began calling her more often, demanding explanations, questioning her loyalty, and reminding her of everything he had given her. He tried to guilt her, intimidate her, even charm her back in his submission. But Ananya's resolve held firm. She wanted nothing more to do with him. Each refusal was like fuel to a fire Kareem could not control. His anger turned darker, more dangerous. He began imagining her betrayal in vivid detail, convinced she had humiliated him beyond repair. His empire, his pride, his carefully crafted image, all seemed threatened by one woman's decision to walk away. And for Kareem Al-Fawad, the thought of losing control was something he simply could not endure. The night that would end in tragedy began like any other at Velour Lounge. Music pulsed through the speakers, glasses clinked at the bar, and wealthy patrons danced beneath glittering lights. Yet behind the glamour, a storm was building. Kareem had been silent for days, a silence that frightened Ananya more than his anger ever had. She could sense something was coming, though she tried to stay focused on her work. When the club finally emptied in the early hours, Kareem summoned her to his private office. The request was not unusual. He often called staff members in for discussions after closing. But this time, there was a heavy air in the room, one that set Ananya on edge. She stepped inside, and the door locked behind her with a final click that echoed in her mind. Kareem's expression was unreadable, his voice calm at first, as he spoke of loyalty, betrayal, and respect. But beneath his controlled exterior burned an anger he could no longer contain. The conversation quickly escalated into confrontation. Ananya stood firm in her decision to leave the relationship, refusing to bend under his pressure. For Kareem, this defiance shattered the last thread of control he believed he had over her. His pride could not withstand the rejection, and his temper erupted in violence. The struggle that followed was brief but brutal. The same hands that once offered her luxury now became weapons of destruction. Within moments, Ananya's life was extinguished in the very place she had once viewed as her gateway to opportunity. The neon glow of Velour Lounge still illuminated the city outside, but behind closed doors, its walls had absorbed a crime of rage and obsession. What had been built as a temple of excess had now become the scene of an unspeakable act. When Ananya failed to return home that night, her absence did not go unnoticed. Friends who often shared rides with her began to worry when she stopped answering her phone. Hours turned into a full day, and concern grew into panic. By the second day, her disappearance was officially reported to the authorities. In Dubai, where the law moved swiftly and surveillance was everywhere, the case was taken seriously from the very beginning. Investigators started by tracing her last known movements. Security footage from Velour Lounge showed her leaving the bar area after closing and heading toward Kareem's private office. After that, she was never seen again. The discovery immediately cast suspicion on Kareem, though his reputation made him believe he could deflect any accusation. He presented himself as calm, even cooperative, but the cracks in his story appeared almost instantly. When detectives searched the club, they found troubling details. Inside Kareem's office, the carpet showed faint stains that had been hastily cleaned. A broken glass lay hidden behind the sofa, and the furniture was slightly rearranged, as if to cover signs of struggle. The forensics team began piecing together the evidence, each fragment painting a darker picture. Meanwhile, Ananya's friend spoke openly to investigators about her fear of Kareem and her decision to end the affair. Their testimonies provided a chilling motive, one that fit perfectly with the trail of evidence. The once celebrated nightclub owner could no longer hide behind his wealth and power. Slowly, the glamorous image he had cultivated for years began to unravel. What remained was a portrait of a man consumed by pride and rage, standing at the center of a crime that shocked a city built on appearances and ambition. The truth was closing in, and Kareem's downfall was only a step away. Kareem's arrest sent shockwaves through Dubai's nightlife scene. The man who once strode confidently through velvet ropes now found himself in handcuffs, escorted past flashing cameras and murmuring crowds. His empire, built on wealth and reputation, crumbled overnight. Investors pulled out, Velour Lounge shut its doors, and those who once sought his favor distanced themselves instantly. The king of the city's nights had fallen, and his disgrace was broadcast everywhere. In court, the evidence spoke louder than Kareem's carefully crafted image. Surveillance footage, forensic reports, and witness testimonies drew a clear line from obsession to murder. His lawyers attempted to portray him as a victim of circumstance, a man pushed beyond reason by emotional turmoil, but the narrative failed. The judges saw through his defense, recognizing not a moment of weakness, but a pattern of control and violence that had escalated until it claimed a life. For Ananya's family in India, the news was devastating. She had left home chasing a dream of success and independence, only to meet a fate that shattered their hopes. Her story resonated far beyond her circle of loved ones. Media outlets told it as a cautionary tale about power, obsession, and the hidden dangers behind glittering facades. She became a symbol of how ambition and innocence can be destroyed by someone's unchecked pride. Karim was sentenced to life in prison, his fortune and influence stripped away. The man who once believed he could control everything was left powerless in a cold cell. Outside, the city moved on, but the memory of the tragedy lingered. Velour Lounge remained shuttered, its neon lights gone dark, a haunting reminder that beneath Dubai's dazzling exterior, one woman's fight for freedom had ended in silence and shadows.